Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be discussing associated companies. And you'll remember from your lecture that associated companies essentially deals with the small business deduction. Remember, the annual business limit for the small business deduction is shared by associated companies. And this is important because without a set of special rules, businesses would divide activities among several corporations to make use of the annual business limit multiple times. Some key provisions. We start off actually referring back to something we've studied before. Remember related persons? Well, if you don't, I recommend you go back and review them again. You'll find these in ITA 251, subsection 2, paragraphs A, B, and C. And the reason I bring these up is because the associated companies provisions talks about related persons. So what provisions are we going to be applying today in this video? We'll be looking at ITA 256 subsection 1 paragraph A, B, C, D, and E. And I recommend you pause the video and go back to your lecture to review those provisions now, or go to the Income Tax Act and read them directly. We won't be going through all 5 of those today. Instead, we'll be looking at some case facts and applying the ones that are relevant. And the case facts are as follows. Corporations A, B, and C are CCPCs that only generate Canadian active business income. For each of the following separate situations, determine whether they are associated, and citing your authority, explain your conclusions. Scenario 1. For each scenario, I'll present you with the shareholder table. In the leftmost column, you'll see the names of the shareholders. In this case, John, John's father, and Albert, a family friend. And in the next columns, we'll have Company A, Company B, and in some cases, Company C, the percentage of ownership each shareholder has of those companies. I always think it's easier to draw a diagram, so let's do that. Here's Company A and Company B. John owns 60% of Company A, and John's father owns 80% of Company B. John's father also owns 25% of Company A. Go ahead and pause the video as you read ITA 256 subsection 1. Do these two companies look associated to you under any of those 5 criteria? Try it now. If you're back, hopefully you found 256 subsection 1 paragraph C. And I've put out the whole provision there on the screen. To make it a bit easier, we can highlight the parts that we really need for this conversation. Each of the corporations was controlled by a person who so controlled one of the corporations was related to the person who controlled the other. That part so far is true. Each company, so Company A and Company B, are controlled by a person, and they are related to one another. And either of those persons owned, in respect of each corporation, not less than 25% of the issued shares. Well, that is true. John's father owns 25% of A and at least 25% of B. So these companies, A and B, are associated. Let's look at scenario 2. Scenario 2 has a different shareholder table. You can pause the video now to try to draw it out yourself. I'll go ahead and draw it myself now. Here's A and here's Company B. John owns 70% of Company A. John's father owns 45% of Company B. And John's spouse, Mary, owns 25% of Company B. And John's brother, Jerry, owns 5% of Company B. There is one instance of cross ownership here. John's brother, Jerry, owns 30% of Company A. Go ahead, pause the video, and see if you can find a provision that shows A and B are associated or not. If you've gone through all of the provisions, you'll find that they actually aren't associated. One of the ones that might make it look like they're associated is paragraph E in section 256, subsection 1. And paragraph E talks about a related group controlling one company where we have at least some cross ownership to another related group that controls the other company. The thing is, Jerry, while Jerry does satisfy that criteria, Jerry only owns 5% of company B, not 25% of company B. So, at least according to those five provisions, company A and company B are not associated in this instance. Let's look to scenario 3. Here we have a shareholder table with a few different shareholders. We have John, George, who is a cousin, and Albert, who is a friend. If we draw this out, we see company A and company B. John owns 60% of company A, and George owns 50% of company B. We can introduce Albert, who owns 30% of company A and 45% of company B. There is some cross ownership amongst company A and B from John and George as well. John owns 5% of company B, and George owns 10% of company A. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can find which provision makes these two companies associated. If you're back, hopefully you found paragraph B, where it says both of the corporations were controlled directly or indirectly in any manner whatever by the same person or group of persons. In this case, we can see that George and John have control of company A and B. In fact, that would still be true even if we removed Albert from the situation. These two companies would still be associated by 256 subsection 1 paragraph B. Let's go to scenario 4. Scenario 4, we have a different shareholder table where now company A is one of the shareholders. Let's draw it out. Here we have company A and company B. John owns 100% of company A and 20% of company B. Company A owns 80% of company B. Pause the video and see if you can find if these two companies are associated. And hopefully you found ITA 256 subsection 1 paragraph A, where it says one of the corporations controlled, directly or indirectly in any manner whatever, the other. And what does that mean? Well, it means we could even remove John from the equation for a second, and we can see that company A clearly controls company B. So A and B are associated by virtue of 256 subsection 1 paragraph A. Let's move on to scenario 5. Scenario 5 has once again a different shareholder table and an additional company, company C. Let's draw this out starting with company A, company B, and company C. We can look to John, and John owns 80% of company A, 20% of company B, and 20% of company C. We can also draw Albert, who is the friend, and Albert owns 20% of company A and 40% of company C. And finally, company A itself owns 80% of company B, and company A owns 40% of company C. We have these companies all being associated in a few different ways. First, we can look at company A and company B. So company A and company B, are they associated? Well, quite simply, we can see that A owns 80% of company B. And as we looked at earlier, that is an association due to ITA 256 subsection 1 paragraph A. A and B are associated. We could also look at A and C being associated, which might not be abundantly obvious to you. You'll say, well, A only controls 40% of C. That is true, But we also have to consider John. John owns 20% of C directly, and John owns a percentage of C indirectly. John owns 80% of A, and 40% of C's shares are controlled by A. So if we take John's 80% of influence on A, multiply it by A's 40% influence here on C, we get 32%. 80% times 40% is 32. 32% plus John's 20% is 52%. And so now we have A and C being associated by virtue of 256(1)B. Finally, we can look at B and C, and are these two associated? And you'll see that they are. Remember, John has control over C, as we just talked about, by 80% here multiplied by this 40% is 32%, plus John's direct 20% holding gives John direct control over C. John also has control over B. John owns 20% directly, and then John controls 80% of A, which controls 80% of B. So 80% times 80%, we'd get 64% influence or control by John over B, plus his 20% stake in B directly. So A and B are also under John's control, meaning that B and then C, which were both under John's control, would also be associated via 256(1) paragraph B. Okay, I hope that helps, and I hope you found this video to be useful. Until next time, thanks for watching, and happy studying.